Sam, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I'm so stoked to be here. And on Star Wars Day, this is amazing.
This is Star Wars Day 2015. First off, you saw the movie last night. How was it?
It was perfect. You know, I think I was a little cautiously optimistic, like most big fans of this franchise, but I was so pleasantly surprised. There was not a dry eye in the house at the end of the movie.
Wow.
Everyone there was just amazed and thrilled. So if you're going, you are not going to be disappointed, which is amazing.
I've only heard raves.
Good.
But what I want to get from you is the level of fan intensity that you saw at the movie theater. What's the craziest fan-related thing you've seen around this Star Wars film so far?
I think, like you say, it has to be the people lining up who already have tickets, because that's like a whole next level of dedication. Like my tickets, or I already had a seat number and everything. I didn't line up, admittedly. But I think it's just amazing. It's just people wanting to express their love for the movie, I guess, in a very traditional way. But even last night at the screening I went to, everybody was dressed up. Everybody, you know, from like a Star Wars t-shirt to a full Wookiee. We had everything there. People with lightsabers, just everyone. The vibe and the energy was so cool because it was like this big shared experience. You know, we all love this thing and we're all so excited about it.
I have to pause the conversation for a second to tell you that I held the lightsaber yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
The man who invented the lightsaber, Academy Award-winning props set design guy, Roger Christian, happens to live in Mississauga.
Right.
Talked to him. He brought the lightsaber. Anyways.
He designed R2-D2 as well,
He did.
right? That's amazing.
Yeah, told amazing stories
So
about
cool.
that. So what do you get from the fandom?
I think there's a real energy and passion that comes from being surrounded by fans all the time and from being a really passionate fan, because being a fan just means loving something really hard. And that's a really cool way to live. You just get to be excited about things all the time. And like, that's way better. I think a lot of people, you know, in this day and age, it's very easy to be cynical all the time or kind of like down on stuff. But being a fan means that you're excited and you're excited with other people. It's a great way to meet people and sort of form a community, which can be kind of an elusive thing nowadays too, when we all kind of live on the internet. But through fandom, you can kind of find your tribe a little bit, find people with similar interests, people who are really similar to you. And that's such a special thing. I've made all of my best friends through internet fandom.
Why does Star Wars inspire so much fandom?
I think that question has a lot of different answers.
Okay.
First and foremost, I think it's because it was really the first sci-fi thing to capture the imaginations of a whole generation. It was the real like first sci-fi space opera, like huge movie. And so for so many people, whether they saw it in theaters for the first time or saw it with their parents as children growing up, it was like their first introduction into the world of sci-fi and fandom. So that holds a very special sort of nostalgic place in a lot of people's hearts, that we all kind of have that same experience as kids. And then growing up, we played Battlefront or Knights of the Old Republic, and we have all these memories associated with it. I also think the world of Star Wars is very special. That universe, it's so magical and unique and huge. It's so easy to imagine yourself in that world. You know, like everyday life is cool, I guess, but isn't it cooler to like be a Jedi?
Well, Roger Christian, the man who invented these props and set design, we had a great conversation about Star Wars as a story and why it's so compelling, and I'm on board.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Star Wars. I'm a fan of the stories.
Okay.
Here's the problem for me. I barely have time to buy clothes that I wear every day, let alone a costume to wear one day and look, you know, a little bit strange, to say the least.
Yeah.
So tell me about getting involved on that level. The costumes. Tell me about, I don't even know where you would go.
Yeah. Well, costumes are so interesting because you can be a casual fan in cosplay, which is short for costume play. That's sort of what we call it. So you can go out and buy a costume, and there are so many places online now where you can get things like that. There are great clothing lines now as well, that if you don't want to wear like a full costume, girls can go to a website like Her Universe and you can buy like a really cute Han Solo dress. You know what I mean? That's like that night you're walking that nice line between like professional and fan culture. So you can do that. But there are a lot of people.
How much is that going to set you back?
About $50, I would say. They're pretty reasonably priced. You can get them at the Hot Topic as well. But I think for a lot of people, the cosplay, the fan art, fan fiction, stuff like that, it becomes like a real hobby and a real way for them to express themselves and their own creativity through something they already love. So if you're amazing at sewing, or even if you just want to practice crafting or that kind of stuff, it's cool to be able to make your own like Leia wig, and then you can sell them on Etsy, or you can go to a convention and people take pictures of you and tell you how cool you are.
I never thought about that fandom as a form of self-expression.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm a writer who writes about fandom. I've made my whole career through talking about fandom. There are many people now actually who are professional comic book artists get their start through fan art, whether they're drawing Luke and Leia and then they get a huge following on Tumblr, and that's how professional organizations find them. Like, there's a really big market for that now, and it's a cool way to get your own creativeness out there.
Okay, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable with you right now.
Okay.
I think part of what's holding me back from fandom is I don't want to get my heart broken. The prequels, they weren't good.
Yeah.
How do you maintain? You're a fan and the franchise lets you down.
Yeah.
How do you maintain hope?
So being a fan means having a broken heart a lot of the time. Because being a fan means you're so emotionally invested in things. Like, I'm emotionally invested in fictional couples. Like, I want people to get together on screen and they never get together, and it breaks my heart. And so I have to go read fan fiction. Or, you get invested, you really want Jurassic World to be good, and then you go and it's just so bad and you're just so sad. Or, you go to the prequels and you leave and you're like, I don't know what was just terrible.
So what's the value then if you end up with your heart broke?
I think the value there is something to be said about hope, like you say, which is great because that's sort of the theme of Star Wars too, is having hope in a better future. And, for fans, you just want something so good that when it is good, like with The Force Awakens, the payoff is worth it's worth sitting through every prequel. It's worth all of that pain because you can just be so happy and thrilled and you just get that payoff. And there were so many moments in The Force Awakens too that did pay off for long-term fans, especially for fans who maybe didn't see themselves represented in the first film, like women, like people of color. There's so much diversity in this film that I was just so emotional over seeing such a kick-butt woman in a leading role. And this, it's all so worth it to hold on for that moment.
Okay.
The great thing about The Force Awakens is that now the people who were fans of the original trilogy are the ones making the film. So they wrested control away from George Lucas, God bless him, but maybe shouldn't be doing this anymore. And they gave it to J.J. Abrams, who a lot of people have problems with, but who I think is really genius at rebooting films. I thought the 2009 Star Trek was really great. And he's a fan. He wants all the things that the fans want. So they gave it to him. And he just did everything that the prequels did wrong. He did the opposite. So we're going back to amazing storytelling, amazing characters. He's using puppets and practical effects instead of the whole CG green screen thing. Mm-hmm. There are no ethnic stereotypes. And most importantly, there is no Jar Jar Binks to be seen anywhere in this film. So I think if you were the person, like most of us who really did have your heart broken by the prequels, this is going to be a great way to just pretend that they never happened, because this film certainly pretends that they never happened.
Well, you brought up something interesting, that idea of fan servicing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Do you think that's a good thing?
I think people say that in a really negative way a lot of the time, like, oh, fan service, they're just giving the fans exactly what they want. But I think that actually really underestimates the intelligence of fans, because fans are people who spend their whole lives watching these movies, knowing what makes them good, knowing what makes them work, thinking critically about what they love about them. So when the fans say, this is what we want from a future movie, who's to say that what they're saying is nuts or doesn't make any sense? Like, maybe what they're saying is just actually what would make a good movie in the future. I think The Force Awakens does a really good job of balancing those moments, those little, inside moments that if you are a huge fan of the previous films, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I recognize that person, but not in a way that feels super shoehorned in, which is a very hard thing to do properly. So that was tricky.
You've talked about this latest Star Wars being quite progressive.
Yeah.
I know a lot has been written about how women are treated in Star Wars. Carrie Fisher has talked about her issues with the Princess Leia bikini, for example. How did you reconcile those things in the past in your fandom?
Well, I think there's a certain amount to be said for having to look at the original films as a cultural artifact of the moment that they were produced. So the first Star Wars was 1977. It was really the first big space opera. There was a girl in a bikini in it. I think that was pretty much bound to happen at that moment in time. you have to appreciate it for what it was. I think the important thing is learning from stuff like that, and we've come so far in terms of feminist criticism and cultural criticism, and I think just general audiences being more aware of things like sexism or racism, you know, inherent in things like the bikini or Jar Jar Binks, stuff like that. So now that we're all sort of more aware of it, I think it's just really important going forward in future films that we don't make those same mistakes. And it's clear to me that J.J. Abrams really learned from the past and made this the most progressive Star Wars film to date. And I think maybe one of the most important science fiction films of all time in terms of gender and race progressiveness, which is, I know, a big statement, but it's true. I was so impressed.
I like your perspective. Will you be seeing this new movie again?
I'm going at 11:30 today, like as soon as I leave here, which I wish was a joke, but it's true. I'm going right now.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I think you spoke very well to my cynicism.
Thank you. Am I convincing
Fandom.
you to get into it, maybe?
You are. You're convincing me, and you're making me very proud of our alma mater, London Central Secondary School.
Yeah, Central.
Thank you for coming in, Sam.
Thanks, Chad.